Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Tonight we're going to take a look at the Rimfire 46. If you've followed RC video reviews for any period of time, you know that I'm less than complimentary about these Rimfire motors, not because of the quality, but because of the price. I don't think the quality warrants the price. I don't think they've done enough to separate themselves from the pack to warrant the price. I've got a couple of motors that I collected for reference. I just want to compare them to the Rimfire. So the Rimfire, one of my biggest complaints with them is the way they state their numbers. They're ambiguous at best. I have their website with their published specs right here on the tablet, and I just kind of transcribed that. But the thing I want to point out is they're saying 1110 watts constant. Okay, I can buy that. That seems reasonable for a 46 class motor. 60 amps of constant current, again, seems okay. But here's the one that charges me up. Burst watts, 1850. Come on, man, that's a spec grab. First things first, I wouldn't even run this motor that high. If this thing were running at 1850 watts, I'd be very concerned that something was going to let go. I just wouldn't. That's torture. I wouldn't do that. You're talking about an 80% boost over their constant sustained power level. I just don't buy it. And then they also say 100 amp max. That's like another 80% boost of amperage over their constant sustainable amperage. I just don't buy it. Their prop range is 4S to 6S, which is a deviation from most of them. Most of them will recommend 4S to 5S. Rimfire says it can do 6S. Again, you know I don't pay much attention to voltage. I pay attention to the amperage on these motors. And then the prop range is 10.5 to 11.5. I've been flying this motor around on my Escapade MX with a 4-cell and 11.85. I don't remember the power it made on that setup, but I'm going to test it. Tonight we're going to run it on a 4-cell, a 5-cell, and a 6-cell, and we're going to see what kind of power this thing makes, and we're going to just put the numbers down. So with that in mind, I want to talk real quick about the comparative motors that I picked for just for the stats comparison. That's really what I'm after. I don't have these motors here or rigged up on the stand, but I know I can trust Cobra. The 3526 is their Rimfire 46 equivalent. They claim a continuous wattage of 1380 at 62 amps. The Turnigy G46, that's the very budget option. They claim 741 watts constant at 40 amps. That's real low for a 46 class. And then the E-Flite Power 46, they claim a 925 constant. They don't state the amperage, but they do recommend a 60 amp ESC in their manual. So those are the comparatives. The 1380 from Cobra, I would buy that. I'll put the price in for the Cobra. I'm surprised to include that. But to me, that's the direct comparison to the Rimfire that I would make for price per watt comparisons or value comparisons. So that's enough talk. Let me get this thing mounted up on the Judge, and let's test it. Let's see what it does. So I'm going to do two things while I prepare for the testing. One is I'm going to calibrate the ESC again, so I've got the power turned all the way up. I'm going to plug it in and all the way down. Okay, and this is not a test battery, this is just a bench battery. So now I'm going to run the motor real quick and see which direction it goes. Nope, that's going the right direction. But if it were going the wrong direction, let me show you what you do. Simply unplug two of the motor leads. It doesn't matter which ones. You can unplug them from the motor to the ESC, or the ESC to the Judge, or the exit wires from the thrust stand to the motor. It doesn't matter. Just switch any pair of them, and then you'll see that the motor spins the other direction when you do that. So there's the motor spinning the other direction. All right, that's backwards. So now to make it go the right direction, just simply unplug any two wires. It doesn't matter which ones, and just switch them. That's all you have to do. And when you do that, the brushless motor will spin in the correct direction. There we go. That's the correct direction. Okay, so I'm going to put this back. Put that back. And I'm gonna get this. This is the prop that I use in flight with the Escapade MX. I use two 2200 4-cell batteries in parallel. So I get 4400 milliamp hours on the Escapade, and it's 4-cell. Okay, that's it. We are ready for a test. I've got my clipboard, and by the way, I don't know if you noticed or not, but I made some changes. So I want you to know that I take comments that you guys make very seriously, especially for guys who really have a deep understanding of what's going on with motor theory. And I want you to see that I made some adjustments to the data collection form that I use. I still have battery, prop, amps, volts, watts, thrust. I collect all of these four off of the test stand as well as RPM. But efficiency, thanks to Steve for pointing this out, but I will be calculating efficiency now as thrust divided by watts. So how much thrust does it make divided by how many watts input into the motor it took. And then weight, I'm going to document the weight for each of these. I'm going to add the power to weight and the dollar per watt number, so you guys can start developing a feel for the concept that I've talked about already, and that's value. What's the value equation here, and how much is the dollar per watt price for this motor? So I think when we marry that up with actual test data, we start to get a real good picture, and it helps us make good decisions on what we buy. Okay, so now if you haven't watched one of my videos on the Judge before, what I like to do is connect a battery and do a quick little spin just to listen and make sure everything on the test stand seems to be working okay. There's no slippage on the prop. You know, there's no unusual movements. And then once that happens, then I punch it and run the test. But I messed up already, because in order to get KV, you've got to do a no load spin. So that means no prop in order to get the measured KV. So I have to take this off now and plug in a battery and just spin it up, and we're looking for the unloaded measured KV. Okay, here we go. All right, 985 is what I see on KV. If you remember the 32 class test, we saw a higher KV on that Tomcat as well. That is a full, let's see, 80 kV. Man, that is 185 kV higher, and it's set at 14 poles, so that's spinning fast, put it that way. That's spinning fast. It should only be an 800 kV. It should have only run at 800 kV. By the way, if you watch, I watch my own videos, and I know it really looks like I'm wrenching on that, but believe me, I'm doing everything I can. I don't want to jake up the thrust meter, so you got to get the prop on there, but I support that motor the best I can. I don't know if you watch closely and you see that kind of thing, but it makes me crazy when I see the video. Like, it looks like I'm wrenching down on the thrust stand, and I'm really not. Okay, I'm just going to do a quick, let me unplug and replug so I can reset the stand. It'd be nice if Turnigy just put a reset. Be nice if they just put a reset button right there, so you could just hit reset and get it back down to 0. Okay, so just gonna quick little spin up. Once I spin it up, I'm gonna be looking for thrust and RPM, because those don't stick after the run. Volts, amps, and watts all stick after the run, so I'll get those after I run the pull. So here we go. Quick little spin up just to see how it sounds, and then we're gonna gun it. It's hot. Oh, it's so hot, and that feels so good. It's Florida, man. It's like 78 freaking degrees, and it's like January 12th or something. It's crazy. I mean, I'm starting to think Al Gore might have been right about something. Anyway, that felt really good. But I also wanted to stop there and let you know, one of the things I do compliment Rimfire on is their quality. And I can tell you, just listening to that motor, it sounds excellent. I mean, it really does sound good compared to other motors. It is a very good sounding, Obviously, they use quality bearings. I just have to point that out and give credit where credit's due. Okay, everything sounds good. Let's run the test. I'm looking for thrust and RPM. So here we go. Well, that was a whole lot of noise. I got 2549 on the thrust, and I had 1189 on the RPM, and I need a weight because that was one of the problems. I couldn't write because the paper flew up. So 11,189 on the RPM. Okay, and let's get the battery was a 4S. This was an 11 by 8.5 APC. The amperage was 53.69. The volt sag was 14.21. And the wattage was 799.6. I'm just going to go ahead and round that up to 800. Okay, I'll do the other calculations off camera. I just want to get back to doing the motor test. So I'll populate everything during a cut, and I'll come back and review all the extra data with you after the cuts. Okay, so that's a 4S, and you know guys, I know that a lot of times I like to run more than one battery, but honestly, all three of the batteries I'm using are basically brand new. I don't really see much point in doing that, honestly. If I had worn out old batteries, yeah, I would go ahead and do it, but these are pretty good batteries. Okay, so that one's an 11.85 on 4S. So I think what I really need to do is switch to, I'm going up to a 5S, so I think an 11.7 would probably be good, or maybe they say a 10.5 on 6S, so I think an 11.7 is probably the place to be. You know what, I got an 11.55 right here. Let me just try that real quick. I think that might be a good one. And if it's not, I have an 11.7 nearby. I'll get that out and try that. Okay, this is an 11.55 APC. And this time we're going to run it on 5S. Now remember, their constant amperage current is 60 amps. And that last run with the 11.85 gave me 53.69. Okay, so this time it's a 5S, 11 by 5.5, and here we go. All right, I'll be looking for thrust and RPM. This is an APC 11 by 5.5 with a 5-cell pack. Man, that was loud. I'm gonna have to get some hearing protection. You know what? I'll tell you one thing I'm gonna do. I'm putting on my safety goggles, and I am gonna put on some hearing protection. That was loud. Okay, let's review the numbers. On the amperage, I got 6190, and on volts, sag, I got 1917. And the power was 1191.2, so we'll just round that down, 1191. So that is really right there at the spec. I mean, that's, they say the max sustained current is 60 amps, and we came in at 61.9. So, and this is static, right? You guys know that it'll pull less when it's in the air. This is a fixed mount, blah, 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 so it's static. So I would say at 5S, I wouldn't even tinker with that. That's the prop I'd use. If you wanted more torque, you could go probably to a maybe a 10.6. We could run that. I think I got a 10.6. I do. I got a 10.6 right there. If you wanted to see that, a 10.6 would give us, you know what? It's only a 5.5. I wouldn't even bother with that. Honestly, I would be running the 11.5 because I think that's going to be, without doing the pitch speed calculation, I have a feeling that would be That's the right prop. I just, my guts, my instincts tell me that's the right prop to run. Okay, so an 11.55 on 5S, that seems appropriate. And see that their numbers, they have the 11.5 on the low end at 4S, so that's wrong. And this is what I mean. This is one of my other complaints about them is their data, they don't explain it very well. They don't. They're saying an 11.5 prop on 4S. I disagree. I run an 11.85 and I'm well under the spec max. So that's one of my gripes with them, especially when you compare them to a company like Cobra, because Cobra puts very accurate numbers together. Okay, now I'll tell you one thing's for darn sure. We're going down to a 10. We're going to try a 10.5 on 6S and see what that does. 10.6, 10.5. Let's try 10.6. They say it can burst up to 100 amps, right? That's their book. Oh, there's a 10.6. It looks like it's already reamed. Yeah, we'll use that one. Right, you know what I'm saying? It's their book. They say, oh, this thing will peak at 100 amps. I'd never do that. That ain't right. That's just not right. 100 amps on one of these? No. I only run an 80 amp ESC, and by the way, thanks to Black Cat Shopping, don't forget about them. They supplied the ESC for the motor test stand for RC video reviews, and it's a ZTW 80 amp, and I love the ZTW ESCs. They are definitely, before I even knew about Black Cat Shopping on Amazon, I was buying ESCs from them, oddly enough. So they were gracious and kind enough to support the channel by making a donation and asking me to take a look at the ZTW ESCs, which I did, and that's what's running this. So can't run, I wouldn't want to run 100 amps through an 80 amp ESC anyway. Okay, where are my safety goggles? This is going to be scary. Man, I hope you guys know how much I do for you. I'm getting ready to plug a 6-cell pack into this thing and run a 10.6 prop. Man, that's going to be loud and scary sounding. I feel like I should get something to protect my jugular. I'm going to check that one more time. There's a lot happening here. I'm just going to check that for tightness. I don't want that coming off. Motor stand looks good. Let me just check my mounts real quick. I don't normally have any problem doing motor tests when I'm well behind it and there's nothing in front of me, because then if the prop wants to take off, big deal, you know. I don't aim it at my car or anything I care about, but I got a wall right in front of me. If that motor lets go, man, it's going to be bing, 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 ricochet rabbit up in here. All right, here we go. This is going to be loud. All right, let's see what happens. I'm just going to make sure everything sounds okay. Oh, that air feels good. Oh, that air feels so good. Okay, here we go. I'm going to run this sucker up. Let's see what it does. I'm going to be looking for thrust and RPM, and here we go. Well, I can tell you one thing. That sounded freaking impressive. I'm taking my earplugs out so I can hear now. Boy, that's really goofy sounding. It sounded killer. So here's what I trapped. I trapped 4,040 on the thrust and 17,621 on the RPM. I mean, that was really spinning. That was a 6S on a 10x6 APC. Let's see what the amperage was. 6831. And 23 volts min on the sag, 2303. And the power was 1591.6. Well, how about that? Okay. Let's unplug this, and I'm going to do a little math. This is going to be a cut, so give me a minute. I'm going to take this all apart and do a little bit of math and see what's going on here, because that was actually kind of surprising. But I want to take a look closely at what's happening here. So 25, 49, 800. One is 39, 11, 81, and clear. 40, 40 divided 40, 40 divided by 1591.6. Okay, the weight of this motor is 268 grams. The power to weight is 800 divided by 2 will be 1181 divided by 268. Got 1591 divided by 268. All right, dollar per watt, 99.99 divided 11. Nope. This. All right. Well, it looks like I'm getting a little bit of an education because I went and looked up Cobra. Now, the reason I'm using Cobra is because I trust their data. Cobra's data tends to be pretty reliable. I mean, it's just every time I've ever taken a Cobra motor and compared or measured what I bought against what they specify in their prop test data, it always comes out very, very accurate. Now, one thing I'll tell you is that there's not a chance in 1,000, to put it politely, that I think that Rimfire 46 can produce 1,850 watts of input power demand. I don't believe it, and I wouldn't try it. I would be very concerned if you tried to push it that hard that you'd blow something up. You'd fuse some wires or something. It's a simple mass equation and mass. It's not designed for that. So I would challenge that. If somebody else can prove me wrong, show me a video. Don't just tell me, because I don't care about hearsay. I want to see video proof. So that number, I just simply don't believe. So I'm just going to draw a line through that and say no, don't do that. What I do believe, though, is their constant power level, and I think it actually might even be slightly understated, with the one point that it's spinning a little faster than their spec calls for by about 185 kV, which, you know, the rough math, that's what, 18%, somewhere in there. It's not a little amount. But with that said, on the 4-cell test, who really cares? I mean, you know, I put it in there because that's what I had. I had 4-cell batteries. I ran a 11x8.5 prop, and I have fun flying it that way, so it's fine. But the real comparison to me is in the 5-cell right here and the 6-cell. They're saying it can run 60 amps continuous, and the 10.6 on 6-cell ran 68 amps. So honestly, I would try that. I wouldn't be too afraid of that one, because in the air it's not static, so the amp demand is going to be a little bit lower. And they claim 100 amps max, which we've talked about enough, but there's a little overhead in there, I'm sure. So I'm really intrigued about that 10.6 combination, because I get the feeling that, I mean, it made 4,000 grams of thrust. Right now, I'm only making 2,500 grams of thrust on that motor the way I fly it today. And they're saying 4,000 grams of thrust on a 6-cell. That's very intriguing to me. But I'll tell you what's even more intriguing is that 5-cell. And I'm looking at my batteries right now to see if I have a 5-cell that I can fit in there, and I think I do. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a 5-cell setup in there with an 11.5 prop. I'm going to have to check my weights, but I think the 5-cell, that to me looks like the sweet spot for this motor, because you're making 3,900 grams of thrust against 4,000 on 6-cell, and you're making 1,191 watts against 1,591 watts of input. So from a efficiency standpoint, the 5-cell is 3.3 to 1 against 2.54 to 1 on 6. So thrust grams per watt is definitely, it's almost one full gram of thrust higher per watt, and the power to weight is also pretty strong. It's more exceptional than what I'm doing now. 2.98 to 1 is what I do now, and 4.40 to 1 is what I would get with the 11.55 setup on 5S. And then the RPMs 14,812. If you want to calculate pitch speed, you have that now. 14,812 is the RPM. So with that said, here are my conclusions on this motor. The first thing is I'm shocked at the 1591 number. That I'm kind of speechless, to be honest with you. I'm going to give Rimfire a lot of credit for that because it's making 1,591 watts of input power against their stated engineering max of 1,850. So that's 300 watts below their max and only 8 amps above. So I would say that their power generation is probably a little overstated. However, on a 6-cell pack, this thing would definitely haul the mail because you're looking at 1,591 watts with 4,000 grams of thrust at 17,600 RPM. So power to weight on that is 5.93 to 1. That's 5.93 watts per gram of weight on the motor. Now, pricing in terms of value, definitely on the high end. The way I'm flying it is the most expensive because I'm making the least amount of power at 800 watts. At 5-cell, the cost drops down quite a bit to 8 cents a watt. And on 6-cell, it's definitely in that premium tier that matches up with where the Cobra landed on the 32 class test. But at 6 cells, it lands at 6 cents per watt, which is definitely, I would consider that you got to draw that with money signs, right? That gets 4. 6 cell, 6 cents per watt gets $4 signs. So it's an expensive motor, but my opinion's been changed a little bit tonight looking at this data. I've never had the opportunity to run it on 6-cell before. Certainly not a dedicated 6-cell. I've done other 6-cell testing in the past where I've done them in series, but this is a full-on 6-cell pack. So this is the real deal. And now I can't fly that in the Escapade. It's way too heavy, but I can probably fly this. This is a 3700 5-cell. I bet I can stuff that in that Escapade, so I'm going to be trying that. When I put this back in my plane, I'm switching from a 4S 1185 to a 5S 1155. And I can tell you right now, I've always been happy with the flight performance of the Escapade. It's been pretty quick, but I mean, it's going to change a little bit when I go up to the 5-cell. I mean, thrust is going to go up 1,400 grams of thrust. I mean, that's a 50% improvement alone. So, yeah. All right, guys. Well, there's my test of the Rimfire. I want to get it off the stand and give you a close-up look at it. That's why half the reason I set up all these multi-angle cameras anyway, so I can give you looks at the goods. So let me pop this off the stand, and I'm going to tell you right now, my opinion about Rimfire has changed. They're still expensive, but wow, it made the power. I want to just check something real quick. Did I go over enough of that with Cobra data? Yeah, so I don't know that I did. I should do that real quick. Okay, so let's look at the Cobra data real quick. If I pull up on 5-cell, the Cobra on 5-cell does 767. And this one did 1191. So Cobra is saying, I gotta write this down. Cobra says, Cobra on 5S with an 11x55, they're saying that they make 767 versus the Rimfire at 1181. That's substantial. Let's look at the 6-cell. So Cobra on the 6-cell with a 10x6, they're saying 985 with a 10x6, they're saying 985, and the Rimfire did 1591. Man, it seems like the Rimfire kind of spanks the Cobra based on their data, which I believe. I believed Cobra's data. So interesting outcome. I mean, I got to be honest with you. I always kind of thought, based on prior measures and evaluations, that the Cobras were right on par with the Rimfires, but it definitely looks like the Rimfire is putting out more than the Cobra. So maybe, well, I guess I got to stop giving Rimfire a hard time. It looks like this motor surprised me a little bit. Okay, let me get it off the stand so you guys can get a closer look at the motor itself. Let's take a look at it. Now when I did the 32 class shootout, you guys know that I just kind of do a quick little visual assessment when I look at the motors and just tell you what I see. So from a fit and finish standpoint, they use a golden black, which is kind of cool. New Orleans Saints, right? It's a very nice finish compared to some of the other motors in the 32 class test. I would say that like the G32 from G-Force, yeah, not even close. Certainly the bearings were much quieter on this motor. And when I look at let me get this prop off. I want to look at those windings inside. Never grab the right wrench. You ever notice that? Oh, jeez. Okay, so the windings remind me a little bit of the Leopard motor. They're real. It's a very fine wire gauge, and very clean inside. I don't see any, when I mentioned in the last video that I talked about motors, I mentioned something about wire hopping. What I meant is when the internal wires, when they wrap them, they kind of skip ahead, and to me that's a poor wind. The better wound motors don't skip inside. They don't have the wires kind of missing or skipping ahead. But anyway, it's a very nice finish. The motor shaft, I'm gonna guess that's a 7mm motor shaft, 7.6mm motor shaft on the outside. It's got a retaining collet on the back. It's got that proprietary cross mount, right? Because that's what Tower does with their products. They have this goofy cross mount pattern, but it works on Tower planes. That's the good news. Gray planes and any Tower planes and Phoenix. It'll work. It'll bolt straight up to those. Inside, the bearings, I already commented on the bearings. I think the bearings are probably very high quality bearings, and you can always tell just by the way it sounds. So definitely quality bearings inside. This is a good sounding motor when it's on the test stand and at the field in flight. So yeah, from a fit and finish standpoint, I would say top marks. This is definitely a top shelf motor in terms of the quality. Even the boot is more secure than some of the other motors, the silicone boot that kind of protects the wires egressing the motor. So, all right, well there you go guys. Looks like the Rimfire kind of made me eat my words a little bit, which is, I'm all right with that, because I'm trying to get this channel to be about data points. And if I sit here and put videos together and say, oh, stay away from those Rimfires, they're overpriced, they're good quality, but they're overpriced. I want to go back to data and do an objective evaluation instead of subjective. And here's what I can say about this motor. My conclusion on it is simple, that it is definitely a premium price motor. It's got a 6 cents per watt price tag at 6S. If you fly it at 5S, which is where all the other motors land, it's even more. It's 8 cents per watt. I'd be curious at some point to maybe look at the Cobra price per watt, but that's expensive. It's an expensive proposition, but you can't deny the power output. The 1192 watts of power demand on an 1155 compared to a Cobra who says they would only make 767 watts. That's something else. And then if you look at the other motors, you got the Turnigy G46. You got the Turnigy G46. It says they make 741 watts, and the E-Flite Power 46 making 925. So this motor on 5S is top of the heap. The Cobra, 1380 watts is what they say. Where are they getting that number? I gotta see where they generate 1380 watts. Max continuous power on 6 cells, 1380 is what they say. But I don't see anything in this chart that operates in the yellow or green at 1380. I see 1400s when you get into the red, and that's overamped. But to be fair, it's 66 amps, and we were at 68 amps. So an 11, let's do a 10 by 6 on 6 cell. 10 by 6 on 6 cell is 985. Yeah, it's making, based on their number, it's making less power. I don't see where they're getting 1380 though. What I see, the maximum watts of input that are within their spec are 1286. If you start getting outside of spec, let's see, a 10.6, so you got to do a straight up comparison. 10 by 6 on 6 cell for Cobra does 985 watts. On the Rimfire 1591, what am I missing here? How can it be that far off? It cannot be that far off. All right, guys, to wrap up, I'm a little surprised at the numbers. And the one thing that I have to go back to is that Cobra, they state 1380 watts is the maximum watts input that their motor generates. But I looked at their chart, and there isn't a single prop or power voltage configuration that makes 1380 watts that stays in the green or yellow. There are some in the red, but not in the green or yellow. So I'm not really sure where they're getting that 1380 watts continuous. But the bottom line here is that if you're looking for a quality motor that makes 1591 watts at 4,000 grams of thrust, the Rimfire is a good motor for that. It's expensive, and I've said that all along. I like the motors. I've said it all along. I don't dislike their motors, but they're expensive. That's the problem. So anyway, I don't know if this helped at all. I hope it did. I hope that the testing results give you something to think about, and they kind of solidify in your mind where the motor really lands. I think it's safe to eliminate the 1840, 1850. Don't do that. That's a no. No, don't do that. You'll be sorry, I guarantee it, if you run your motor like that for any period of time. But for 1500 watts or below, this thing made the power. All right, that's all I've got for tonight. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did, thumbs up, thumbs down, like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, do all that stuff. It really helps me out. I appreciate you. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. Take it easy.